Summary of Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. Cannery Row is a street in Monterey, California, that is full of canning companies. Steinbeck doesn't know how to accurately show what it's like to live in this place, so he chooses to let the stories crawl in by themselves. This is the start of a collection of short stories that are only loosely connected to each other. Even though there are too many plot points to list here, the following are the most important and connected stories in Cannery Row. Steinbeck talks about the important places in Cannery Row, like Lee Chang's dirty but helpful grocery shop. Everyone does their shopping in Lee's store, which is a center of culture. Mac and his group of drifter friends try to get Lee to buy them pints of whiskey even though they don't have any money. Lee isn't surprised when Mac comes in a day after a local guy named Horace Abbeville kills himself. Horace went to Lee's shop the day he killed himself and said he wanted to pay off his debt. So, he gave Lee the deed to his fish meal stash, left the grocery store, and then killed himself. Hearing this, Mac asks Lee if he and his friends can move into the warehouse. He says that if the building is empty, teens might break the windows or set it on fire. Lee realizes that he has to let these men move in because if he doesn't, they will break the windows to show that he should let them live there. Lee gives Mac what he wants, but only after he agrees to pay $5 for it. Mac and his friends then move into the warehouse and call it the Palace Flophouse. Lee Chong never gets a penny from this. Cannery Row has more than just the Palace Flophouse and Lee Chong's food store that are well known. Dora Flood also runs a brothel called the Bear Flag Restaurant. She describes it as a decent, clean, honest, old-fashioned sporting house where a man can have a beer with friends. In fact, Steinbeck calls the Bear Flag virtuous, which shows that he thinks of it as yet another place where people like to hang out. Unfortunately, not everyone who works there is happy, even though the women are all happy. Steinbeck tells a story about the former watchman of the brothel, a lonesome man called William. William saw Mac and the boys sitting outside one day, so he went to join them. When he sat down, however, all talk stopped. Mac and the boys started talking again after William left, which made William sad. So, he went to Dora and told her, "I feel terrible. I think I'll bump myself off," I told her. "Well, do it when you want and don't ruin the rugs," she replied. After having a similar conversation with one of the whores, William went to the house's Greek cook. The cook told him that people who talk about killing themselves never actually do it. William took the cook's ice pick and drove it into his own heart when he heard this. Steinbeck says that there is now a new watchman called Alfred. Everyone likes Alfred much more than William. Western Biological, a lab where Doc, a marine scientist, lives and works, is another important place in Cannery Row. Doc is liked by everyone in the town. He is kind and wise, and he often takes Hazel, one of Mac's gang, with him to help him collect sea animals. Hazel enjoys these trips because he gets to ask Doc a lot of questions. Doc is popular with a lot of young men in Cannery Row, not just Hazel. Frankie is a boy who showed up one day at Western Biological. Frankie is a strange boy, and Doc can tell something is off about him, but he treats him well and lets him sleep in a small box in the lab. One day, when Doc is having a small party, Frankie gets a beer from the kitchen and gives it to a woman sitting nearby. After she thanks him, Doc says, "Yes, Frankie is a great help to me." This makes Frankie so proud and happy that the next time Doc has a party, he tries to recreate the moment. But this time, he tries to take a whole tray of beers and drops them all on a guest's lap. He then runs out of the room and hides in the basement. Mac and the boys want to do something nice for Doc like Frankie, but they don't have enough money to throw him a party. But they know that Doc needs frogs all the time and will pay them a nickel for each one they bring him. So, Mac goes to see him and tells him that he and the boys need money for something important and that if Doc needs anything, they might be able to help him out. Doc says, "I could use 300 or 400 frogs, which doesn't come as a surprise." Mac agrees to go collect frogs the next day, since Doc has to go to La Jolla in Southern California to get octopi. Once they agree to this deal, Mac asks Doc if he can use his car. Doc says he will be using it himself, so Mac goes to Lee Chong and asks to use his truck. Lee says he can't help Mac or Doc because his truck is broken, but Mac says that his friend Gay can fix it, so Lee agrees. Lee's truck, which is a changed Ford Model T, is fixed by Mac and the boys. But on the way to where they plan to catch the frogs, their car breaks down. Gay tells them they need to find a new needle for the engine. He goes to find the part, and it's 180 days before the boys see him again. Mac and his friends were waiting by the side of the road for Gay to come back. Eventually, they realized that he wasn't coming back, so Eddie went off to find another Model T, stole its engine, and put it in Lee's truck. When they get to their goal, they wait until it gets dark because frogs are easier to catch at night. At last, an ex-military captain and his dog come up to them. The captain tells them to leave his land while holding a shotgun. Mac starts talking to him about his dog and notices that the animal has a bad wound. Mac tells the captain that he knows how to make an ointment that could help heal the wound. The captain starts to like Mac and finally invites the whole clan back to his house. As Mac applies his medicine to the dog's wound, the captain tells the group that he's lonely because his wife is a politician who is always on the road. He then gives them a lot of rare and expensive whiskey. Soon, he gets very drunk and gives Mac a puppy from his dog. He also helps them catch a lot of frogs in his own pond. After this, the captain and the boys keep drinking and end up setting fire to the curtains of the house. The captain then passes out, and Mac thinks that they should leave before he wakes up. Doc, meanwhile, goes down to La Jolla, stopping often for burgers and beer. When he gets there, he turns off the car and goes to sleep. When he wakes up and sees that the tide is going out, he takes his supplies and makes his way over the slippery rocks. At one point, he sees a flash of white under a small amount of water. When he pulls back the seaweed, he sees a dead woman's face. He walks back to the beach, where he tells a man to take the body to the police station, even though he doesn't want the prize for finding her. Doc doesn't get back to Cannery Row until late, so Mac and the boys have a lot of time to get ready for the party. Mac makes a deal with Lee and gets him to take frogs as payment. He tells Lee that he can sell these frogs to document. Lee sees this as a chance to make more money, so when Mac and the boys buy decorations and whiskey, he charges them too much. But they get drunk and lose sight of their goal, which was to celebrate document. When they finally give Lee all of the frogs, he lets them put them in Western Biological as long as he is there to watch over them. So, Lee Chung, Mac, the boys, and a few strangers start to party in Doc's lab long before he gets there. They play records on his phonograph and accidentally trash the place. When Doc comes back, the party is over, his favorite things are broken, and the frogs have all hopped away. After the party went wrong, Mac tries to say sorry to Doc, but Doc hits him in the lip. But he soon chooses to forget about the whole thing, and even though Mac and the boys don't know it, he leaves his anger behind. Soon after, the group decides to make up for what they did by throwing him another party, so they plan a surprise birthday party for him. To do this, Mac tricks Doc into giving him his birthday. Mac doesn't know that Doc gives him a fake date because he thinks Mac is up to something. This time, word of the party gets out far and wide, and Doc finds out about the plan. Even though he doesn't like the idea, he decides that he should get ready. He knows that Mac and the boys won't think to feed the guests, so he orders a lot of steak and whiskey. Then, on the day of the party, he acts like he's surprised and joins in the fun. Eventually, he starts playing sad records on the phonograph, which make everyone feel strange and sad, but no one minds. Doc stands up when a record ends and reads an old poem about love and memories. When he's done, everyone, including Doc, feels a sweet sadness that is only broken when a group of sailors rush in thinking Western Biological is Dora Flood's whorehouse. When Mac tells them they are in the wrong place, they get angry and point out that there are many whores at the party. In response, Mac, the boys, and even Doc fight the sailors, flailing about with joy until police cars come roaring down the road, at which point the sailors leave and everyone hides. Soon, the party starts up again, and when the police officers and sailors come back around, they join in the fun. Doc wakes up the next morning and looks at the damage. He buys a quart of beer at Lee Chang's and tells the store he had a great time. Back at home, he reads the same sad poem he did the night before. At one point, he says with tears in his eyes, "I know that I have savored the hot taste of life."
John Steinbeck was born in California just 2 years after the turn of the 20th century. He went to Stanford University in 1919, but he dropped out without getting a degree. 6 years later, he moved to New York City and worked as a writer and a laborer. During this time, he tried to make a living as a writer, but it was hard to get his work published, so he went back to California and worked a number of labor jobs. Steinbeck's first book to do well was Tortilla Flat, which was published in 1935. It tells the story of a group of Mexican Americans in Monterey, California. Over the next few years, Steinbeck wrote a number of books about life on a farm and the problems that come with it. Of Mice and Men, written in 1937, is the most well-known of these. Steinbeck's book The Grapes of Wrath came out in 1939. It won him a lot of praise, including the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. After The Grapes of Wrath did well, Steinbeck went on to write more well-known books, such as Cannery in 1945 and East of Eden in 1952. The Nobel Prize for Writing was given to Steinbeck in 1962. Steinbeck died at the age of 66 in New York City in 1968.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.